Welcome to another episode of Behind the Process with RoboHead, where we talk with our clients about challenges their teams have overcome, victories they've had, and just kind of how work is and how, what all goes into managing creative and marketing teams. With me today, I've got a special guest, one of my favorite customers. I'm sucking up a little bit, but I also mean it. Her name is Buice, and she works with Arch Capital. And thanks so much for joining us. And if you don't mind, we'll just jump right in. Can you tell me a little bit about your role within Arch Capital, and then tell us a bit about your team?
Yeah, thanks. Well, good to see you. I work for Arch Capital Group, as you said. It's a big group of insurance, reinsurance, and my role is across multiple groups within that company, multiple lines of business. And I am in charge of helping with the processes, process improvements, change management, and especially our project management software that multiple groups all utilize.
Awesome. And then just a little bit, how long have you been at Arch Capital? How long have you been kind of in this role? I know your roles have obviously changed as you've been there, but can you share a little bit about that, your background as well?
Yeah, over 10 years. I was originally part of a company called AIG. Most people have heard of that company, and that company was bought out by Arch Capital. So the majority of my time doing and working with this part has been with them.
Okay, awesome. And then as you've kind of been, with Arch Capital for a while now, and rolling out software like RoboHead, for example, to teams, would love to kind of understand maybe in your time, you've done a lot of change management, but whether it's around change management or something else, what are some of the challenges that you feel you and your team have maybe faced recently or over your time there? What are some things that you had to overcome?
I think one of the biggest things, and most people can resonate with this, is the ever-changing work and business needs, meaning the businesses are in an evolutionary process, the
Mhm.
team members, what they want to achieve. So that constant change that you have to be agile and nimble to be able to change and make sure that your processes go in line with that, and that you have a software that can change with you so you're not continually having to change software. So those have been challenges, and the things that we've had to make sure that we can do, or that I can do and help facilitate.
Gotcha. So as you're kind of talking about the constant changes, what's maybe one, notable or recent, one notable or recent example of one of those changes? And it could be either related to the work you're doing or related to the team or related to any process change. But what's something that you've maybe faced recently or that stands out to you that was something, interesting to kind of go through and work through?
Yeah, and it happens all the time in lots of our groups, but one of them had used our software management, which was RoboHead, for a while, and yet we didn't fully utilize the product. It was basically being used for just a place to put a project name in and track the fact that we had a project on something and close it.
Okay,
So the
gotcha.
challenge was, as the team started growing, it wasn't just enough to use it that way. We had to start fully utilizing some of the features that made it accountable for people, made due dates real due dates. So we had to go through a change management process. We had to explain to people why it was going to be their benefit to have to do more work within the software, and how that was going to be valuable. So you have to create trust while you're making these changes. You have to
Yeah.
make sure folks have heard it. So it was a big challenge for a very advanced group of high level folks that work on important things.
And when you're talking about that, so you said originally it was just kind of a tank for like, here's the name of the thing that we're working on and maybe a status. Is it complete or is it on hold or is it in progress? And then you mentioned due dates were one thing. We're going to actually like track due dates and hold fast to those. What are some other things? Like, was it like tasks, or what were maybe some other things that you decided it was
Right.
to the organization's advantage to start implementing?
Well, a lot of ways. We started getting more information in each project description, which helped us track doing projects over and over again.
Okay.
What kind of projects we were doing over again, to be able to measure some of that, see how many of those we were doing. Absolutely make sure that we had a task that was representing the person that's working on it, so that they understood when they needed to have that done versus just looking at it and prioritizing it themselves. We
Gotcha.
did critical things, are critical versus evergreen, so you could reprioritize if you needed. So we started using all those things, all those pieces, to be able to effectively manage the growing business. This group's, from what they started, the number of team members grew, and the number of expectations and what they had to do. And that particular team has to get things in and out very, very quickly.
Okay, so in some level, this was like they're doing like high volume, kind of very like production work. They're doing a lot of work. They've got a lot of throughput, and then like you said in the past, when they started, it was the team was of the right size where you knew what I was doing or I knew what you were doing, or and then as they grew, just needed to you needed to get kind of more granularity and understand where folks were at and map the process better. Is that kind of really what drove it?
That's exactly right. So, you had to get everybody to hear the same message of what we were trying to accomplish. So this is good basic change management. Get everybody to hear the same message. Everybody to buy in that this was good for the team. Everybody agree on the way we were going to go about it, and then agree on how to implement it. Because if you don't get all that, you miss pieces, and what you do and the work you've done, no matter how great your software is, it's not going to work. We were lucky, and I can tell you that we were able to change and move and do all this with RoboHead because that's what we selected to start with, and it helped us do all those very important changes that we needed to do without having to go look for another software.
Okay, awesome. And then so as you're driving that change management, just kind of curious, did you see, you mentioned some resistance. We had to like sell people on why they needed to use this. Was that resistance from top to bottom within the organization, or was there a group that maybe caught on faster, or a group that you had to pull along a little that came a little more slowly, or how did that break down along the different types of users or roles in the org?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty interesting. There were some polar opinions about wanting to use this and fully embracing the software and the
Yeah.
accountability. And part of that was just, I think, a style of how people do
Mm-hmm.
work. So you have to make sure you understand everybody has how they prefer to do work, and everybody had to come to the plate. Some were going to be uncomfortable with it, some weren't. So you really had to make sure people understood it was for the good of the team.
Yeah.
So yes, we definitely had very polar differences about wanting to do this and how to do it. And there was the whole side of the team that thought this is just going to take more time and
Mm.
effort. And then there was another part of the team that said, oh, this is going to make it clearer to me how to get my job done and when. So, you have to really make sure that everybody gets on board or you're not going to be successful with those type of things.
Is there anything, any specific trick or thing you found that was able to, get the folks who were like, this is going to take more time, maybe not all the way over to the other camp, but at least over far enough? Like, yeah, how'd you end up kind of selling them, or
I
what was it?
really think it's letting people be heard. We
Mm.
got the group together. We even brought in an outside consultant that went through and looked at everything, that the way we wanted to do it,
Oh,
the way
okay.
we thought it to do. And that person basically just reinforced everything we'd already said and known we wanted to do. But sometimes it's good to get an outside person to say this is a good way to do it. But let's be heard. Speak up. Talk about anything that you think why this isn't going to work. And we did a little bit of that, and that also helped bring everybody to the same way of thinking.
Okay, awesome. That makes a lot of sense. Do you know, you know, as you were kind of going through that change management, what was as you kind of think of the system and setting up the system, were there some areas where, as you were listening to those folks and letting everyone be heard, where you kind of went back and were like, okay, maybe we need to tweak kind of how we thought we were going to implement this? Were there any, did you change the implementation, or change maybe the configuration or the plan at all based on that feedback? Or was it more so they're just working through stuff and eventually we all got on the same page?
Well, we made sure to get a lot more detail than we had originally planned to get, a lot more detail about what was important information for each group to do their job. And it was important to understand some groups were going to use a task more than others were going to use a task to focus on. So you had to find that right fit. So it really was about sitting down and getting everybody's opinion out there, everybody's um, resistance, if you will, to why they were afraid it wouldn't work for them.
Okay.
And that really was the way we drove it through the hard parts and the easy parts and got it implemented, and it's working really well now.
Awesome. That's so cool to hear. One of what you're as you're saying that, it's making me think of another client I worked with, and I'm just curious if this is kind of what you meant. You meant some people you said some people use tasks different than others, and so I'm thinking of a client once that within their team they had, I think it was like 10 designers and like 3 copywriters, and but then they had like 2 people that did videos, and they didn't work on projects together, they worked separately. And so for that team of designers and copywriters that were doing the high volume work, they had these very granular schedules. But then for like the guys that were shooting the video, editing the video, packaging everything up, and working kind of by solo, they more focused on status. Is it in progress? Is it complete? Is it published? And so is that kind of what you mean? So like you had to say, hey, for this group of users, they need to we need to be a little bit more detailed and granular. And for this group, they just don't need it, or am I completely missing it?
Well, yeah, and I've actually seen that in different groups. The one group that I'm talking about, we ended up with a fairly generic task structure.
Okay.
But in another team I work with, that we've come through all these processes and it always in consistent change, we found that, for instance, someone who's doing web updates wants they may do 4 web updates at the end of a project.
Yeah.
And they specifically wanted a task for each place they did a web update, than being responsible for just saying, I want to do a web update.
Exactly.
And I'm going to know the 4 places. So you do learn that as you go along. You can't just decide up front what's going to work for somebody. You have to learn to be flexible and allow them to say what's going to work for them. You can't force it. If you do, they don't embrace it as much.
That's a really good point. You can't, big takeaway, can't force it. Or you can, and then it doesn't work very well. So you can't really force it. I'm curious, anything else, actually, if you think of this story that you're telling, how long did that whole process take? What was obviously it's continuing every day, right? But what was kind of the initial rollout, or the initial kind of enhanced rollout, if you will, where we're going to use the tool and use all the features. How long did that take to kind of make the changes and then get those changes implemented, at least for the most part?
Well, because we went really deep in a deep dive to make sure we understood what each type, we clearly went back and identified each type of collateral they work on, whether it's an email message or whether it's a poster or whatever, to go through the process for each piece of collateral and where the hands touched. So because we chose to do that, chose to relook at all our business units and clients, chose to really get granular, that process really took about 6 months from start to finish, because we couldn't stop working and we had to keep going at this very high turnaround, high pressure group.
Yeah.
So we had to work behind the scenes before we really implemented it. That one took a long time. I've been involved in groups where we'll make a pretty significant change within a few weeks. Yeah. So it's really about the timelines of the work you have to do, the type of work you do, and the makeup of your team, the type of people working on your team, copy, design, whatever. You have to really figure out where you have flexibility and when you don't.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And as you said, you're doing a lot of work throughout the day. This is not their day job. So you have to kind of layer it in slowly and not just throw them into the water that they have plenty of water they're trying to swim in right now. We don't want to.
Well, and my point too, data integrity, when you start making big changes in a system like RoboHead, you have to remember what's going to come out on the other end when you start changing fields and things.
Absolutely.
How's your data integrity going to be impacted when you start wanting to report on those year over year? So you have to think of those things too.
That makes a lot of sense. You might, at one point, you might have more visibility, I guess, in the reports, like year over year. And if you make a lot of changes that help day to day, you got to make sure you're not also derailing the year end reports.
Yeah, you don't want to throw the data out the door.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, this has been super helpful. If you could take kind of everything you've shared with us and just kind of any advice you would have for other teams that are maybe embarking on rolling out a new tool like RoboHead, or maybe they're just making process changes in the existing tool that they're using. What you've kind of already given it, but if you could kind of come back to it, what's one major piece of advice that you would say, no matter what, don't forget this. This is a thing you got to take with you.
Yeah, I'm just personally a very strong believer in change management. I really believe that you have to understand it's not just deciding how to do something. It's not just getting a project management software. It's understanding how to put those pieces together with the people doing the work. And if you don't get all those pieces to fit, you're going to have a much harder time being successful. So I just think following some basic change management theory helps tremendously. And if you partner that with the right software and the right thinking through the right processes, I think that's a key to success.
Awesome. And thank you so much for taking some time to talk to us. Thank you, folks that are watching or listening, and we'll see you on the next Behind the Process.